Chris, now let's get to the thicker things. So we spoke about systems and a lot of other things, but one of the tasks, and when you mentioned mistakes, I thought to myself, this is a place where you can easily make a mistake, and that is feature finding or profiling. I talk about profiling the bottom. So the feature finding is one of the first things that you do when you start. And you do that before you fish. You've got a time period. Just explain to the viewers in terms of the rules of the competitive carp facet. When are you allowed to do what? How much time do you have for what?
The rules actually changed recently. You're only allowed to start feature finding when the competition actually starts. So in the past, there was a siren that went off that allowed you into your camp. You'd set your camp up and you could start feature finding during that time period. The rules have subsequently changed so that's no longer allowed. So you'll have a time period to enter your camp, get your camp up. Another hooter goes that allows you to put the rods in the water, and only once the rods are in the water are you allowed to start feature finding.
Oh, so you can actually cast the rod with a bait, or cast all the rods with a bait, and then you do feature finding.
Yeah, so I mean, the way that it's set up now, that's probably the best strategy, that at least you've got an opportunity to start fishing. So normally what I'll do is I'll put my rods in more on the right-hand border of my camp and start feature finding on the left-hand side, and then put them more on the left-hand border of the camp and feature find on the right-hand side. Then you have to risk a line in between your rods because obviously you're dragging the sled. You need to sort of space them out to do a middle line. And
doesn't it take a bit of focus away when you've got a rod in there? So now you're busy feature finding, and now there's a rod running, and then you stop the process. How do you get around to that? How do you get focus, or how do you do it?
There needs to be a good communication with you and your partner. If one of those rods do take off and you are busy, you need to quickly put a back lead on to try pin that line to the bottom that you can fight the fish over the marker float. Last thing you want to do is pick that marker float up, start dragging it, pick up all your lines. It's a huge mess, waste even more time undoing all of these knots and getting the rods back in the water. So I used to prefer it when we could feature find beforehand, but the rules have changed, the international rules, so this is the best way we try to get around it at the moment.
Okay, when you do feature finding, tell us about the process. How do you go about? What does your system look like?
How does the marker float system?
Well, maybe you can touch on that as well, but then also the process.
Sure.
The process of doing.
Okay, so I mean, we'll have a chart with a grid on it, and we will have intervals, say, every 5 meters. You will throw a line on your the border of your camp. So normally you would do at least one on your left border, one on your right border, and one down the center. Because I know Bloemhof, I would only throw 3 lines. If I see something abnormal, I might investigate that in more detail, especially if I'm seeing a variation between left and right. If it's not like a uniform,
like
maybe something's banking in from the side, you want to explore that, you might throw more lines. But obviously we also know Bloemhof really well, been fishing it for forever, since I was 15. So we've got a really good idea of what's going on. We're really just checking what's specifically going on in front of us and what might have changed through the season, the flow of the water and so on, if a bank has moved slightly or something like this.
Okay, so in brief, and I know it's quite a detailed process, but what did you see with your profiling? What was the data that looked back at you after doing the...
Sure. So on this particular event, we fished very high levels of water. I think it was like 115% or something. I've never had this before. The water level was rising while we were fishing by maybe this sort of depth. Very unusual. What it meant was here close by, there was some grass in the water, which is not normally in the water. It also meant it was really deep right in front of us.
Grass, like grass, normal veldgras.
Veldgras that has been flooded with water pushing up into it.
Okay.
So bamboos has got like steps in most of the areas. And this brought a step we would normally be camping on into the fishing zone.
You went out fishing on.
Yeah, well, I mean, we stepped straight off the side and we're almost over knee deep in water. They actually had to change the rules for the event to allow us to go over knee deep, which is the normal rule.
Yeah.
as a result of this water that was pushing up. So what it meant was the bottom at the back, the deeper water, was deeper than normal due to the water level that it pushed up. So call it that bottom in my area was about 8.5 meters, 8.4 meters. You start coming up a slope to come to like the first step. So it would come from 8.4 gradually up to approximately like a 3-meter shelf or so. And then from there, it would come up to about 2 meters and gradually come up to the bank.
Okay, so there had a few.
There were a few areas where it dropped off faster, where it was more flat, and where it gradually dropped off again.
So after the feature finding, and you've got your whole chart, you obviously marked a couple of areas. So where did your circles, how many circles were there and where were they?
Yeah, so I normally like to let the fish talk to me. So in the start of the competition, I'll scatter my rods at different distances to try to pick up what zone of the fish naturally moving in. In this particular competition, we started catching some fish around 100 meters in the beginning. We definitely knew something around there would be good. I also picked up some fish in about 70 meters. And as a result of that, that 70-meter mark is not too far from us. It's a good distance to try to bring the fish in a bit.
Yeah.
So that made us comfortable to fish in that type of zone. And then I come back to my chart and I say, cool, well, at 70 meters, it was 6.5 meters deep about. At 65, it was 6 meters. So we decided that we'd feed our one spot at 65, that we could fish at the 70 meters. We wanted to fish behind it.
Why do you fish behind your spot and not on your spot?
We do both. So we also fish on our spot. But what we tend to find with the volume of feed we're putting in, it's good to fish on the edges of the feed because there's a lot of competition for the hook bait in the feed. So sometimes you want to catch the fish when they're approaching the spot because your hook bait might be standing out a bit more. Other times the fish are on the feed, in the feed, then we like to fish in the feed.
Does the quality of the hookup differ if you are in the feed than outside the feed in terms of the activity or something like that? You sometimes get foul-hooked fish and things like that in the feed when there are too many fish, or
you definitely get liners.
Yeah.
So you can pick up that the fish are there. Sometimes it's an indication it's time to come back because you're fishing over them and the big school of fish is over your main line. I wouldn't say I'm more focused on my hook bait presentation. How buoyant is that hook bait in that kind of scenario? If I'm not getting the hookup that I like, I might change to a bottom bait, I might change to a wafter, I might change to a pop-up and try to find what type of presentation is working best in that scenario.
Now, on that subject, did that change through the 72 hours? Or did you start off with something and it kept for the...
We started off with something that worked for us mostly throughout the competition. I'm more explaining to you like my thought process as an angler in general in these type of situations. If the fish are there, I want to catch them where they are. I don't want to move away from them because I'm not getting the hookup rate that I like. I rather try to refine my approach to get the result I want to get in the place the fish currently are.
But you spoke about wafters and pop-ups and presentation and so on. So my question is, throughout the 72 hours, does that, or did that, in this case at Bloemhof, did it change, or was there something that you caught onto and it was okay for the 72 hours? Or did that dynamic change through the time? Did you have to do alterations as it went on?
I would say 90%, without giving away too much, of my approach was consistent for the whole competition. There was a time period for about 10% of the competition towards the end where that changed. But I think if I stuck to my 90% approach...
Okay, so it wasn't as if you were, then you had to do this and try something else. And so you didn't have to change all the time. You could get something and it was just ticking over.
There were so many fish. They were just so available. You could have tried different approaches and I think been equally successful with different approaches. We just stuck to the approach we were using that was giving us the best hookup ratio and landing fish ratio. And once we found something that worked, we just stuck to that and try to keep the mechanics as similar as possible the whole time. Even if we're changing flavor or something like this, try to use a similar size bait, a similar weight bait, and so on, rather than changing too many variables at one time, because we got to a mechanical result. The rig mechanics was working. We're getting the result we were looking for. We lost fish a lot in the beginning, like I told you. Once we refined and tweaked and got to the right answer, we try to stick to that as far as we could.
What tasks on the peg belongs to who?
This can change throughout the competition. Generally, there was a saying that I learned from Peter White. Whoever's gooiing the fish raak, let them gooi.
Okay, so hierdie keer wie het gegooi?
This time we both threw. I did most of the baiting up in the beginning, although we always alternate. You end up getting bored, also getting tired, physically exerting. Small, meticulous work on the table, baiting up the whole time, landing fish the whole time. So we alternate. We go through stages where we take turns. And then whatever, I must bait up 15 hook links, and then Hakim must bait up 15 hook links.
And when it came to the feeding?
When it came to the feeding, I'll be honest, Hakim did a lot of that work, especially the preparation of the feed and getting everything ready to go into the water. I think the important thing is somebody must make sure you're getting ready to get the feed in the water, because you mustn't miss your window. When the fish bite this much, you can easily get distracted and forget to feed and realize, well, op die laaste nippie, here's a problem. This feed is not in the water. I'm going to run out tonight.
Hoe belangrik was dit geweest om te voer en die frekwensie?
It was important. The fish were biting so much that sometimes you could forget that you need to feed, because whatever the last batch of feed you've put in is still working well. And as I say, it happened to us more than once that Hakim is like, hey, broer, the stuff needs to get in. I mean, there were certain time periods I even considered taking out the rods and both of us just feed, because if we don't get the feed in tonight, we're going to pay the price.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that might answer your question best. Yeah. We had a situation where there were a lot of fish in the area naturally. It was important to keep the bait in there, to concentrate them where you wanted them, for the purpose of bringing them in quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't really go for like a trickle feed type of approach.
Oh, so yeah, klomp gevoer en dan vis julle en dan voer julle klomp en dan vis julle.
When the bite tempo comes down, it's a good time to realize we should think about feeding.
What was the indicator of a bite tempo coming down? What were you looking for?
So it changed throughout the competition. I would say if it starts getting to the point that the rods are lying, like a rod is lying about 45 minutes to an hour. Just remember, if they're each lying an hour, one rod is going every 15 minutes, so that keeps you quite busy. We definitely had time periods where the fish were, you would rebait 4 rods, throw 1, 2, 3, 4, by the fourth one, the first one goes. So, I mean, then that bite tempo is maybe 6 minutes or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It can get so fast that it's actually difficult to keep up with it. At those stages, we actually realized it was best to land 4 fish, bait 4 rods, throw 4 rods, land 4 fish, and so on.
One of the processes that needs to be tuned.
Yeah. Obviously, you try to keep them in as much as you can.
Yeah.
But there were definitely time periods where it was just too fast for that.
Last question. On the peg, and I'm talking dynamics, what do you and Hakim disagree on?
I don't think we had a disagreement. I'm very particular about the partners that I fish with, because I get very limited freedom and break in my life. I work really hard. I don't have an opportunity to take a rest often. And for me, I love fishing. It must be, I love working, doing things like at an extreme level, but we must enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I must say, I've always enjoyed it with all of my partners. And it was a great one with Hakim. There were some times that were difficult. So normally the pressure can begin to rise if things start getting challenging.
Yeah.
At a stage we were behind Jason and them, and we really needed to catch up, and it wasn't working as well as we needed it to work. And then we do a fishing competition. We split up, 2 rods, whatever, maybe one short for each of us, one long for each of us. And then we start figuring it out until one of us or both of us are back onto the fish. Then we decide collectively what is the fastest way to get the fish in the net as fast as possible in terms of bait up time and so on. From there, we synergize.
Well, that was my question. How do you resolve it if you have got a view and you believe that A is the best and I can believe that B is the best? How do you resolve it? But you say you do a bit of a competition and then you say let the data decide.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain things that's really difficult. Say, for example, decision on feeding. But then it's easier for you to agree on a principle. Like we're going to feed where the fish want to bite.
Yeah.
Then the fish can talk to you and the fish can decide rather than you having to decide. The next thing becomes about what rigs are we putting on, what baits are we putting on, what dip. And the fishing competition is a nice, fun way to actually learn from Mgipia to break this ice and kickstart things again.
Okay. Well, Chris, well done. 1.1 ton. Excellent performance. It was great. A good win for you guys, and we are proud of you. So well done. So I'm not going to let you go empty-handed. So first thing, I'm going to give your blast from the past. I'm going to give to you so that you can take it home.
Thank you.
I know it comes from a long time back.
Thank you
and
very much.
then I would like to give you a shirt that you can wear whenever you go fishing. And
nice.
Show everybody that you love it.
The Bank Angler shirt. I'm honored. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and sharing some information with us.
Always happy to help.